It's an absolute honor for us at World Mizrahi to introduce this, the sixth part in our series that we introduced post the first yahrzeit of Moreno, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. And we are absolutely privileged at Mizrahi, the World Mizrahi movement, to partner with HaChevra LeCheker HaMikra, our friends Yisrael Crystal and all the board members, which have done so much to disseminate the teachings of Rav Sacks here in Israel in the Hebrew language. And together we are working towards, at World Mizrahi all around the world, to, of course, to continue to deepen, disseminate in breadth and in depth the tremendous teachings of Rabbi Sacks and the impact that it continues to make in the world. We all know how Chazal in a number of places point out that tzaddikim b'mitatam kriim chayim, that tzaddikim, long after their physical passing, are considered alive because their teachings continue to echo into the echo chambers of history for generations to come. And we are playing our role in furthering the echo of the tremendous teachings of Rabbi Sacks. This is the sixth in the series of To Heal a Fractured World, and we welcome our special friend, Rabbanit, Rachelle, Fraenkel, who is a very dear friend and who has plays a role in so many institutions in teaching Torah and disseminating Torah, both at Nishmat, at Matan, and beyond. She has participated in so many programs of ours at World Mizrahi. And I just want to say how appropriate it is that Rabbanit, Rachelle, is speaking about the Torah of Rabbi Sacks and also about the gift that Judaism has brought to the world, because I think not only does Rabbanit Rachelle teach Torah in such an inspiring, stirring and relevant way, her whole life and message is one of hope, one of healing a fractured world, one of bringing to the fractures of the world the hope, the healing, the shleimut that comes with all the challenges in the imperfect world that we live in. And we know how much Rabbi Sacks' teachings were about the politics of hope, about how hope is such a core part of bringing healing and completion to the fractures. So it's most appropriate to have you, Rabbanit Rachelle, teaching this, the sixth in our series. It's nice to see you. We have to continue to learn from you, and we should all get together for smachot, for limud Torah, and disseminating the depth of Torah in general and the teachings of Rav Sacks, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. B'chavod, Rabbanit Rachelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to do anything with Mizrahi and with the HaChevra LeCheker HaMikra, and specifically anything that has to do with Rabbi Sacks. The big problem is that whenever you try to bring him to a new audience, you feel that anything you will do can only spoil, because he says everything so perfectly, not to mention in a perfect English. You know, at least when I speak Rav Sacks in Hebrew, I feel like maybe I'm somehow mediating it to a crowd in the language that isn't so exposed. Baruch Hashem, over the years, and with help of many people, including Tzur Ehrlich, the amazing translator of Rabbi Sacks, it's growing. But at least you feel justified. And speaking English, especially my English, on Rabbi Sacks never feels good enough. But alasot, we'll try to do a bit of it. And there will be some Hebrew, but I promise to try to translate everything. So the title is very presumptuous. It's the gift of Judaism to the world, and over and over and over again, Rabbi Sacks says in a ton of places, you know, all over, that the greatest gift of Judaism to the world is, and as Rav Doron said, hope. And that's not necessarily intuitive. It might not have been what you would have thought to say, and it's, when I say over and over and over, it's in every topic that Rabbi Sacks touches on it. Somehow it eventually reaches to hope and to the Jewish contribution in creating hope, in giving a language to hope, in creating a whole culture hope, and through Judaism to the Western world, etc. So I'll try to do my best to bring some of these issues. Here and there, I'll share a screen, or I'll read from the screen. Basically, you know what? I'll start with one of these great quotes. And when they had the Shloshim, there was a compilation by the amazing people at the office in the UK of Rabbi Sacks' quotes, and they're endless. You know, these coins that once you hear them, they never leave you. So here's one that inspired the title. Hope is one of the very greatest Jewish contributions to Western civilization. So much so that I have called Judaism the voice of hope in the conversation of humankind. Okay, so he gives us this picture of, which is an optimistic picture, I must say, of the humankind having an ongoing conversation. You know, instead of, you could say we're having ongoing wars, we're having ongoing conflicts, but there is also an ongoing conversation of civilization, of humankind, and the voice that Judaism brings to this conversation is the voice of hope. So I had some skepticism regarding how could you, yes, it is a Jewish message, but is this the Jewish message? Is this, what about other cultures? Is it, maybe it's in the nature of humankind. Maybe it's not necessarily a Jewish thing. And I, you know, in the conversation, like anybody who reads, who learns Rabbi Sacks, he's in a conversation with Rabbi Sacks. I kept on asking him these questions, and he kept on coming up with answers. So I'll try to share some. But I'll start from one of the dramatic places where the shoresh, the word tikva, hope, appears in Tanakh, and that is in Chazon Ha'atzamot HaYeveshot. Yechezkel, I can't do the Ezekiel stuff, I'm sorry, but Yechezkel speaks of the prophecy of the valley of the dry bones, and it's you know, the highest drama you can reach, and he describes how HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings him to the valley and shows him the endless amounts of dry bones, and he asks them, Ben Adam, Hatichyena Atzamot ha'ele, you know, man, shall these bones live again? And then he says, prophesize to them, and they will, etc. And he says, Ve'omer alai ben adam, ha'atzamot ha'ele kol bet Yisrael hema. These bones, this is the nation of Israel. Omrim yavshu atzmotenu, avdat tikvatenu, nigzarnu lanu. And they say we're ashes, we're up in smoke, we're dried. We lost any hope. Avdat tikvatenu. Okay, and these are all very famous words, so I don't have to read them all. But we, you know, once in the 70th year of the state of Israel, Mizrahi put together this very short but very accurate video that depicts Chazon Ha'atzamot HaYeveshot as it presented itself in front of these generations, from the ashes in Europe to what happens in Eretz Israel, and amazing video. It doesn't grow old. And here Rabbi Sacks says, then he said to me, okay, this is from the Pasuk, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried up and our hope is lost. Avdat tikvatenu. We are cut off. Therefore, prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Oh, my people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel, etc. And Rabbi Sacks says, nothing in all of literature so graphically describes the fate of the Jewish people between the Holocaust and the rebirth in 1948 of the State of Israel. Almost prophetically, Naftali Herz Imber alluded to this text in his words for the song that eventually became Israel's national anthem. He wrote, Od lo avda tikvatenu. Our hope is not yet lost. Okay, so the bones say avda tikvatenu, and Naftali Herz Imber says Od lo avda tikvatenu. Not by accident is Israel's anthem called Hatikva, the hope. So this is just, I'll start with the height of the drama, and he talks about tikva, okay? And I needed him to bring up the word tikva, the biblical word tikva, as opposed to just the concept of hope, because I want to first try to understand what tikva means within the biblical context, okay? And we have it here, we have it in Lo Avda Tikvatenu. We have it in, many times in Tehillim, Kavel Hashem, Chazak ve'ematz libecha ve'kavel Hashem. And we will have to think how to translate it, because we say hope to, but it's not exactly hope to. Maybe it's lean into, maybe it's trust. We have Mikvah Israel, Adonai kol ozvecha yevoshu, besurai ba'aretz yikatevu, ki azvu mekor mayim chaim et Adonai. This concept of Mikvah Israel Hashem. And we say, so mikveh has to do with tikva. Mikveh is a ritual bath, right? It's used in different parts of halacha, and Mikveh Israel, also part of tikva. How does this thing work? And you look all along Tanakh, and you find many different mentions of it. And I'll start with this, with Mikveh Israel Hashem. Okay, so the famous quote from the Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva saying, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashrechem Israel, you're so lucky, because who purifies you? Avichem shebashamayim, your Father in heaven, because it says, I shall throw pure water on you in Yechezkel, and then in Yirmiyahu it says, Mikveh Israel Hashem. And the word Mikveh Israel Hashem literally seem to mean, in Rabbi Akiva's drasha here, how do you purify yourself? You dip into this mikveh that Yirmiyahu mentions. What is this mikveh? It's supposedly God himself, itself, whatever you say. Somehow it's connecting and including yourself within the divine, and so you get purified. Okay, that seems to be the drasha that Rabbi Akiva is doing. Mikveh Israel Hashem, you use Hashem as a mikveh. But the simple meaning of the pasuk, Mikveh Israel Hashem, has nothing to do with the ritual bath, the mikveh. It has to do with tikva. It has to do with the one you turn to, the one you lean upon, the one you turn to in prayer, the one you trust, the one you have faith in. Mikveh Israel Hashem, the one that gives you tikva. Right? So the drasha of Rabbi Akiva is a very deep drasha, and it's actually close to it. It corresponds with the pshat, with a simple meaning, but the word itself is apparently not directly related to the ritual breath. So we ask ourselves, what's the story with mikveh, tikva? In Hebrew, we know we have shorashim, we have the roots of the words, and one who actually speaks of this is first the Maharal, and then I'm quite confident that Rachelle Hirsch was inspired by the Maharal to say the following thing. So we'll listen for a minute to the Maharal. The Maharal says, and this, because the mikveh is called by this name, because the water, I'm trying to translate this, nikvim ve'ne'esafim hamayim betocho, are collected into it. And we'll see this soon by the Rachelle Hirsch. all of reality is collected onto divinity and onto Hashem Yitbarach. And for this reason, he serves to purify anybody who wants to be cleansed. Okay, so here there's a interface between mikveh that somehow has to do with collection of material, of everything turning to one point, and mikveh as a purifying bath, as a ritual bath. Let's listen to Rachelle Hirsch. Rachelle Hirsch, I looked for the translation in English and I didn't have the book, and online all you have in Safari is German. I couldn't do it. So I'll Hebrayish it to you, okay? Rachelle Hirsch has this, he talks about the word Yikavu Hamayim. In the beginning in Genesis, when Hashem separates the heaven and the sea, and then Hashem wants the water to move away and to expose the land. It says Yikavu Hamayim. Okay, so Rachelle Hirsch tries on a grammar level to understand what's Yikavu, and he has this whole collection of roots, kava, gava, kapa, whatever, a whole list there, and he says all these roots teach us of collection of material, concentrating them, all of them in one point, in the depth, in the height, or in the center of something. All the materials concentrate in one point if all the particles of the material aspire, that's what he says, shofim, aspire to the same point and turn to it, okay? So, lehikavot is the natural phenomena, is any place where you have water streaming. You would have them streaming down to the lowest place, and the water from all over would come to one place. That would be called hikavut. And all these roots have to do with such phenomena. And then he says, and the root kav, okay, which we in modern Hebrew say kav is a line. It's like a two-dimensional thing. And he says, kav, the original meaning of kav is the tool that, I knew the English word, but it's when builders build a building and want everything to be very straight, they use, or I should say this way, very straight, they use a line with a weight, and it weights down and everything goes directly in what it's actually using gravity. And makes everything directed in one direction. That's called kav in Hebrew. And then he says, and metaphorically, we have kaveh relating to he says, to nefesh adam, to the human spirit. So until now, we explained to us that this root has to do with all the particles turning in one direction, everything concentrated in one point. And now he says, and the metaphorical use of kaveh, tikva, kaveh Hashem, etc., is when people turn to Hashem with all their heart and with all their spirit. And then he says, and sometimes we say kaveh Hashem. We describe these are kaveh Hashem, people that lean on to Hashem, trust Hashem. All their hopes are directed at Hashem. And sometimes we say, Kiviti Hashem kivta nafshi. And what we actually mean is the attempt to make Hashem turn to us. Okay, Kiviti Hashem and PL. We try with our spiritual efforts, with our prayer, to make Hashem do this kaveh thing in our direction, to turn to us, shine his face on us. And he goes on and on explaining the relationship between the simple root and the metaphorical use of it. And eventually he says, tikva is this place, hope, is this place where all your being is turning to a place, is pouring into a place, is leaning onto a place. It's all concentrated in one direction. I should say, away from you to a known goal, and in Genesis, when it is told to the water, "Yikavu hamayim," it's as if this idea of water gravitating is put into their nature at this point, right? In Bereshit. Okay, so what we had here was a bit of a grammar-oriented discussion, but before we go back to hear Rav Sacks speak in his own voice, nobody could do it better. I mean, voice you can hear on YouTube as much as you want. Thank God he left us so much. But the writing. But just to finish up, what we had up to now is what was this interface between kava, mikveh, tikva. So it turns out that here I'll look for a good quote here. Say if you look at Fraenkel, okay, he wants to explain to us what a mikvah is. Okay? He says, look, a lot of people have drashot. I'll tell you pshat, the simple understanding. And then he goes ahead to say the following. When a person in the process of tshuva goes into the water of the mikveh, okay, he is supposed to experience creation and rebirth, okay? כדי שיראה האדם את עצמו אחר הטבילה, כאילו נברא באותה שעה. כמו שהיה העולם כולו מים טרם היות בו אדם. You can imagine that it was like the first psukim in Genesis. It's tov vavo v'choshech al pnei tehom. It's only water, and you're dipping in, and as you come out, you feel this sensation of rebirth, of new creation, and this inner commitment and hope. And it's important here to say hope and commitment. It doesn't go alone. To renew your deeds, just like this experience that you're now experiencing. So using a mikveh in the process of tshuva is trying to relive this experience of creation, of renewal, and to accept this upon yourself in your future deeds. Okay, so the interface with tikva and hope is this. I think in Hebrew we would say hitkavnenut, the focus, I would say committed focus onto a certain direction and renewal. Okay, so let's try to now. I'll try. 1 second, just so I get an idea of what's going on here. Let's try to see where that connects with Rabbi Sacks's idea of hope. Okay. If I would describe to you a mikvah as a ritual bath, originally, it would, and I would say, what does this serve in the process of tshuva, and what does tshuva have to do with our topic altogether? You would probably think that this is something very passive. A person goes into the water and they think things will happen, some kind of hocus pocus, some kind of magic will happen, and they'll come out a renewed person. And as you go into the literature and they connect it with the essence of what kaveh is, what tikva is, what hope is, it goes hand in hand with a deep, active commitment. And it seems when Rav Sacks in endless places speaks of hope, he speaks of a deep, active commitment, okay? And that is apparently the opposite of what many people think when they say hope. You know, I hope you have a nice day. I hope I hope things turn out well. I hope we'll have good weather. It's, you know, I might want this greatly, but there's nothing I can commit to. There's nothing I can do to affect it. I'm in no way influencing the situation. And here I want to hear us to hear what Rav Sacks speaks to as here. Maybe I'll try to share screen. Here. Again. Oops, not this one. Stop. It always becomes messy when I share screen. So let me continue here. Okay, so I go one more time. Okay, so we'll do it my old way. Here we go. So to start, it goes. For instance, he speaks of this happened every time. I'll try to give the context, but it's from all over. He speaks of positive psychology and things that go on in the Western world during recent decades. And then he says, what happened is a failure to understand the difference between optimism and hope. They sound similar, but they're quite different. Optimism is the belief that things will get better. Hope is the belief that if we work hard enough, we can make things better. Between them lies all the difference in the world. Okay, so to me, optimism here sounds like the Israeli way of saying "Yeh beseder." It seems like it comes with the Israeli passport. You have this. You learn how to say "Yeh beseder." Don't worry, "Yeh beseder." But what does "Yeh beseder" mean? Who's going to make it beseder? How does this? In Israel, it became a name of like a. It has some negative meaning when you talk about the culture of Yeh beseder. Okay, so you can talk a lot about Israeli optimism and chutzpah and whatever, but that maybe you should try to call hope. But when the culture becomes Yeh beseder, it will be all right. It results chas v'chalila in even in tragedies. But here Rabbi Sacks says, I'm not talking about optimism. Okay, it's nice to believe that things will be okay. I'm talking about something very different. And I collected a few of these. It goes, optimism is a passive virtue, hope an active one. It needs no courage, only a certain naivete to be an optimist. It needs a great deal of courage to have hope. And again, here's something I'd like to expand on a bit. What does it mean? Okay, so I understand that hope in Rav Sacks' eyes is about being active. It's about having a plan. It's about having partners. It's about partnership. It's about going ahead and making it better. Okay, but what does it mean that it needs courage? So he explains. He says, and we'll explain too. To be an optimist, if you didn't suffer too many blows, you can keep up your optimism. And as a nation, it doesn't exactly work. He'll explain that in at least our nation. But as an individual, what courage does it? So I think one of the things that, first of all, being active is a big deal. But besides that, once you're not just optimist, you're hopeful, meaning you're engaged, you're invested, you're committed, you're all in, and that's what hope means to Rav Sacks. Then you're very vulnerable. You're very vulnerable because you have so much to lose, because your hopes are high and your hopes are real. Optimism is Okay, so you can be disappointed because you're optimistic. We do know the people that make sure to live out their life disappointed, as in pessimist, so they never get proved wrong, or they're never let down. Okay, so we're not talking about that. But to be optimistic, it's nice. To be hopeful is very, very vulnerable. And to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to allow yourself to have so much to lose, takes real courage. Okay, so he says it's not just about the difference in it's not just an attitude. It's not even only having a plan. It's willing to be exposed. It's willing to lose. It's willing to be courageous. Okay, I'm going on with Rabbi Sacks. Hope is the belief. The prophets of Israel were not optimists. Okay, and he brings examples. All some terrible prophecies that don't leave us smiling. And then when everyone else felt secure, they saw the coming catastrophe. But every one of them was an agent of hope. Okay, and this expression, to be a Jew is to be an agent of hope. Again, it appears maybe a dozen times that I found, and I don't know it. I read a lot, but not all. It goes on. Optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active one. Excuse me that it's repetitive because I collected it from different places. It needs no courage. I'm sorry. Okay, I got. No Jew who knows his or her history can be an optimist. We have seen too many great civilizations, ancient Egypt, the Roman Empire, medieval Spain, and the pre-war Germany, lapse into barbarism and murderous hate. You don't need to be an optimist to have hope. Only hope empowers us to take risks, engage in long-term projects, marry and have children, and refuse to capitulate in the face of despair. He talks in length about, for instance, Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the not spies, right? In the desert, and he says the sin of the Meraglim was their defeatism, the fact that they lost hope. He says, no Jew worthy of them. You look at Jewish history, you don't become optimistic, but no Jew worthy of his name is every Jew worthy of their name is an agent of hope. Now, I want to spend a minute regarding this agency. Being an agent of hope and as being the voice of hope in the human conversation is expressing a certain spirit, but it's also experiencing that spirit as an individual and as a nation. Out in the world, there's a very, very big body of research regarding hope. In the social sciences and psychology, the way this research works is as you try to characterize personality traits and different patterns that people have, there was a very, very clear picture that people that are depicted and come out in the research as hopeful it's in a very, very strong correlation with healthier, happier, more socially adept, more successful in work, in school, in learning. And the correlation was so strong that the research started saying, okay, I want to know more about this. I want to know how to define hope. I want to know what it is. Is it a feeling? Is it a skill? Is it a way of thinking? Can it be taught? Can it be given from one person to another? And the main characteristics first of all, they at least the research today definitely defines it as a skill, as something that could be taught and learned and passed on from one person to another. Often we sit with someone that is suffering for one reason or another, and all we really wish is to be able to give them hope. I think in Spanish and in a few languages, hope is Esperanza, which is the kind of, it's like aspirations, like it's to inspire, to expire. It has to do with breathing. Okay, you feel you want to give a person hope, like you want to give them oxygen. You want to make them feel they have room to breathe, to see some horizon, to see a future, and research has gone in that direction and defined it as something that could be done. And when they try to think of the different aspects of it, so it's seeing a goal and a future. It's having a plan, like Rabbi Sacks says, it has to be active, it has to be courageous, and mostly it's a sense of agency. A sense of agency means that you feel like you actually have the power to move in that direction. Okay, it's not only I have this fantasy, I have this dream. Maybe there are ways to do it, but like in Rabbi Sacks' word, it's not only thinking it will be okay or things will get better. It's thinking together we can work and create things better. So the together is a very strong part of this. It's the sense of community and partnership. But even in the individual place, a person feels this sense of agency. He feels a sense of power over her future and destiny. That's a main characteristics of hope, and it is one of the things that you can find over and over in Rabbi Sacks' writing. You can also actually wonder with him at this amazing thing, because this idea that Jewish culture raises us to be hopeful, and we'll say a little bit more about it. It is quite surprising, as he said. You look at the history, you look at all the suffering, at the exile, and you can understand why Jewish culture would give black humor to, macabre humor to the comedy scene in New York or whatever. That you can see growing within Jewish culture. But hope, and because hope needs agency. And I'll give an example, not from Rabbi Sacks' writing. You open Bereshit, and the first pasuk, you read the first Rashi, and he tells you, oh, you must be asking yourself, why does the Torah start here? It should start in Parshat Bo, and we'll give up all of Sefer Bereshit because there are no rules and laws here. What do we need all these stories? And then Rashi goes ahead and says, it's because Koach Ma'asav Higid Le'amo. One day, people are going to come to you and they're going to say, you captured our land, you conquered our land, you're thieves, you're living in a place that doesn't belong to you. And then you'll say, oh, the same divinity that created the world and gave you the land decided to give us the land. So you look at Rashi, and now forget the psukim for a minute, and you look at this Jew, experienced during his lifetime unbelievable suffering and pogroms and crusades, and very, very, very little autonomy. Okay, his and his community's life depend on everybody except themselves, and he sits there, and his consciousness is a higher consciousness. It's a consciousness of one day I'll be a Jew living in Eretz Israel, and somebody's going to come to me and say, "Oh, hey, you thief! You took away the land." And you say, how does that happen? How does this person living in the eve of the Crusades, people, being massacred, he sits there and he can imagine this other being, this different way of living, a whole different angle on existence. And I'm bringing this example of the first Rashi and the Torah because it's so typical of the gift of Jewish culture to Jewish culture, to Jews, before I even speak about the gift to the whole world. This ability to say, as low as I am, there's a world of tikkun, okay? There is a world of things could be better. And I somehow, in this irrational way, and there's nothing rational about hope, Rabbi Sacks says it over and over, in this faith, I know I somehow, as a group, as a people, as an individual, I'm an agent to much more, to a better future, to a different future. I can dream it, I can make it, and we're on our way. So I'll share a little bit more. Okay. I don't mean Zoom share, I just mean read to you. I was saying that I was a bit skeptical about this idea that davka, how do you translate davka? I don't know, but specifically the Jews brought to world culture the hopefulness. It's probably a human trait, and again and again, of Sacks gives us this comparison. So I'll read to you some of these from a collection of places. First, he describes in the world of paganism. He says, gods were at best indifferent to our existence, at worst actively malevolent. The best humans can do is avoid their attention or appease their wrath, their anger. In the end, though, it is all in vain. We're destined to see our dreams wrecked on the rocks of reality. The great people of tragedy were Greek. Judaism produced no Sophocles or Aeschylus or no Oedipus or Antigona. Biblical Hebrew did not even contain a word that meant tragedy. In modern Hebrew, we say tragedia. Okay, so I'll just stop for a second. So he says, first of all, in the pagan world, there wasn't a concept of a caring, loving God that created you for good and for love and cares about you and would like to pave a positive road in front of you. That he says that in the pagan world, most gods were they were busy with their own politics, and as long as they were busy, the humans were happy because what they didn't want is attention from the gods. This god got angry for this and this for that, and hope was not something you're going to get from your spiritual beliefs in a pagan world. Then he goes on to describe the atheists in Greece, and again in many places he says Greeks' gift to the world was the tragedy, and Jews' gift to the world was hope. So if we want to go a little bit deeper, and of course he does, what's deep inside of that is the concept of free will. Because in a tragedy, you make the fatal mistake and it's all downhill from there. Whoever read a Greek tragedy knows how it works. In many cultures today, in Islam, and it's a monotheistic culture, there's maktub. It's all written, it's all decided, there's no real deep concept of tshuva, of free will, of the deep, real ability to do tikkun, to correct things, to better things, to undo things that are spoiled, to move both the individual and the world to a better place. Okay, so this thing that it brings a few times regarding tragedy in the Greek world, I think the essence of that is the lack of free will and the lack of tshuva and the lack of this the concept, the aspiration to go towards a world of tikkun, a world of correction, which is, we must say the word now, it's a messianic idea. Okay, it's a word an idea that says the world is moving towards a better place. Let's get a little bit of more of the comparison to other cultures. And again, if it's repetitive, it's because I took it from different places. Then there are secular cultures, like that of the contemporary West, in which the very existence of the universe, of human life and consciousness, is seen as the result of a series of meaningless accidents intended by no one and with no redeeming purpose. All we know for certain is that we are born, we live, we will die, and it will be as if we had never been. Hope is not unknown in such cultures, but it is what Aristotle defined as a waking dream, chalom ba'akitz, a private wish that things might be otherwise. As seen through the eyes of ancient Greece or contemporary science, there is nothing in the texture of reality or the direction of history to justify belief that the human condition could be other and better than it is. So again, here, if you want to dig deep into the secular Darwinist world, Darwin himself wasn't secular, but the Western world, the element of free will in a world that's all evolution and well, the discussion of free will is a deeper discussion than that, and it's deep water territory. I'll watch out. But many of the atheist evolutionaries don't really in depth believe in free will. To some extent, they do. I'm not going to go into this conversation, but the idea of purpose is definitely not there. And the minute you talk of purpose, you're talking of a loving God, of a caring God, of something that has a goal, something that has a direction. And as he's saying, it might come through Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in various ways, but this idea of a purpose, of free will, of hope is channeled in through Yahadut. Let's see if one more piece on this. The ancients believed that human destiny lay in the stars, or blind fate, what the Greeks called Ananke. Spinoza argued that our lives are governed by natural necessity. Marx claimed that history was determined by economic interests. Freud held that human behavior was shaped by unconscious drives. Neo-Darwinisms argue that we are governed by genetic codes hand-wired into our brains. Freedom in all these theories is an illusion, okay? And when there is no freedom, there is no choice. There is no choice. There is no working towards a goal. There is no agency. You can't feel your own power to alleviate your condition and the world's condition. And then there is no hope. Okay. Maybe I'll stop for a second to see if. Okay, I'm just peeking at the chat to see. Okay, so here there's a comment about the Meraglim, that they lack not only hope but focus, and it goes together, of course, because we said to the very beginning, Yikavu Amayim, hope is the way you direct your focus, your mental capacities. Okay. So I'm just go back to. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Another. I really had to choose what to use, but here. Another place where this comes up is in the context of the burning bush. Excuse me, English, okay? The sneh. And Moshe turns to, actually Hashem turns to Moshe, whatever, the whole, it's a long dialogue there. And Moshe, in a way, demands from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, tell me who you are, expose you, give me something about you. And Hashem says, Ehiyeh asher ehiyeh. And for Rabbi Sacks, this is another moment where it's like a focal moment that gives you not only some, names of God are always the closest thing we can grasp of the essence of God. That's why we're so careful about names of God, and that's why there's the whole shlilat ta'arim, the inability to speak of God. But here there's a point in time where Hashem says, I am ehiyeh asher ehiyeh. And it seems like Rav Sacks, jumps on the opportunity and he says, here, I'll tell you in concentration what this means. Okay, so it goes, one of the most formative moments in the history of Judaism came in the encounter between Moshe and God in the burning bush. Moshe asks God that name, what name he should use when people ask him who he is. God replies enigmatically in a phrase that occurs nowhere else in Tanakh, Ehiyeh asher ehiyeh. Non-Jewish translation read this to mean I am what or who or that I am. Some render it I am, that is who I am, or I am the one who is. These are deeply significant mistranslations. The phrase means literally, I will be what I will be. Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I once tried translating this piece into Hebrew, and it's just so redundant, you don't end up saying anything. Because, when you read in Hebrew, you understand that eheyeh asher eheyeh is eheyeh asher eheyeh. I will be what I shall be. Or more, the phrase made, okay. Or more fundamentally, God's name belongs to the future tense. Okay, I repeat this. God's name belongs to the future tense. His call is to that which is not yet. If we fail to understand this, we will miss the very thing that makes Judaism unique. Judaism, and here it's interesting to me, not only what he's saying, look, this whole culture, this whole religion, this gift to the world is turning your eyes forward because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes are forward. And in fact, it was very hard for me not to bring, there's a piece of Rav Nachman of Breslav, when he talks about a person in the context of mikvah and a person wanting to better themselves and to do tshuva. He says, "Bechinat eheyeh," like eheyeh asher eheyeh, bechinat tshuva. Ki eheyeh da'ana zamin lemahave. I won't read it in Hebrew and Aramaic here, but what he's saying is when a person does tshuva, he wants to become better. What he's actually saying is, I'm enabling, or I'm preparing myself to become. I'm opening myself to or exposing myself to the opportunity and possibility of becoming. Okay, and in that sense, it's like they say in Latin, that we imitate God, right? So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu in essence is Eheyeh asher eheyeh, so every time a person wants to become, to be part of this movement of redemption, of correction, of tikkun olam. They're imitating God and saying, I'm preparing myself to become. That's the process of tshuva. So I'm going back from Rav Nachman of Breslov to Rav Sacks, because it's fascinating that it goes down to the tiniest details. He says, Judaism is a religion of details, but we miss the point if we do not sometimes step back and see the larger picture. To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is a sustained struggle, the greatest ever known, against the world that is, in the name of the world that could be, should be, but is not yet. There is no more challenging vocation. Throughout history, when human beings have sought hope, they have found it in the Jewish story. Judaism is the religion, and Israel is the home of hope. So it's fascinating he says there in the continuation, it will take a whole book to show you this, but every detail of mitzvah, of halacha, is embodiment of hope. It's a protest against despair. Okay, and it goes into the tiniest details. For our last couple of minutes, I want to say, and really this is, the high tone that we should keep with us, feeling that what hope is in Judaism. But I want to share one or two more things. I mentioned research and the question if we can give somebody else hope, and our desire often to turn to the people that look hopeless and to give them this give ourselves and give them this tremendous gift of hope. And as Rabbi Sacks says, it takes courage, it takes vulnerability, it's active, it needs to have a plan, it needs to feel agency. But one of the researches of hope that could be found online, as he describes the whole topic and what he learned about it, he ends up telling this personal story. He says, I had a terrible childhood and early teenage, and at some point I had a very specific plan on how to bail out on all the pain and suffering I feel, and actually had a date. If things don't work up to that date, I won't hang around to see how things develop. And then one of the days, one of my teachers in middle school sits down next to me, and he doesn't say a word, but in the deepest sense, he leans in and he's with me, and he's silent, and his whole concentration is with me, and he's not saying anything. And then after 3 or 5 minutes, he looks me in the eyes in a deep trust, and he says, he names him, and he says, you know what? You're going to be okay. And this is not the Yeh Beseder that Rav Sacks says is optimism and not hope. It was a deep sense of trust and hope. And the guy says that a couple of months went by, and the final date arrived of his plans. And as he was contemplating how he's going to do it and what he's going to do, he kept on hearing the sound of this teacher telling him, "You're going to be okay." And he felt like this, and ever since he feels that the gift of hope is something that could be passed on. So a bit personal, but our family went through an ordeal with the kidnapping of our son, and then after a while, there was a very similar beginning of such an event. A family's son went missing, and things were looking very bad, and this idea came up and said, aren't you going to go visit the family? And my feeling was, I can't go visit now. I need someone with an optimistic end, someone that things worked out for them. Somebody that, if I walk into their house now, chas v'chalila, it will only promote despair. I'm not the right person to go now. And I was telling, my friend was asking me, and I was telling this to my friend, we need someone with an optimistic end, an optimistic story. And she turned to me and she said, but I think that you're an optimistic story. And it's a sentence that walked with me, because I was trying to figure out what this means. And eventually what I knew to answer myself is hope, or optimistic in the better sense of it, is not about everything working out the way you wished it to work out. It's not about, all our fairyland or all our dreams come true happily ever after. But it's again about this sense of a good future ahead, of agency, feeling that you can be part of creating that good future, of partnership, of people coming in with you to help you feel that this is somewhere in the books for all of us. And this, I think that was the point where this hope became from just, I hope you have a nice day, to became a much deeper, very committed, very, very courageous and vulnerable demand. And if there's one thing I would need to say as a bottom line for Rav Sacks's idea of hope, he doesn't even think it's a feeling or a state of mind. He thinks it's a moral demand. In other words, if you grow up with this sense of hope, you learn from Torah the sense of hope, you learn from your religion and your culture the sense of hope, it demands of you to take part. It demands of you to promote it. It demands of you to be part of this eventual redemption and Bezrat Hashem Geula Shlema. There's a lot of other things that should be said, but that's enough for today. Hi, Jody. There's a question here, which is more important, following the details in Judaism or the general hashkafa? I think that almost all Jewish thinkers of all the ages would say that it's through the details that you achieve the hashkafa. Hashkafa alone is the fluffy stuff. It's through practicing and telling the story and passing it on that you get the high ideas. So,
thank you again to Rachelle, to Rabbanit Rachelle Fraenkel for the beautiful shiur as part of our series at World Mizrahi. Next week at the same time, Rabbi Shaul Robinson of Lincoln Square Synagogue will be presenting on evil and morality. So we hope to see you all then. Thank you again, Rabbanit Fraenkel, and for everyone for tuning in.